Why I stopped being a teacher after just 1 year. A little overview about me. Hi, my name is Precious. I'm currently 22 years old. I have an Associate's of Arts in General Studies. I have a Bachelor of Science in Child Learning and Development and also in Psychology, and I have a Master of Science in Psychology. I do want to start this video by saying I've always been in the teaching field. My mom used to be a teacher and my grandma is a principal. So teaching is not new to me, and I've also taught in religious settings or as an early teenager, and I was also a substitute teacher for a while. Now, straight out of undergrad at 21 years old, I got my offer letter to be a second and third grade math and science teacher, and I was so excited. While teaching, I was also doing my master's program online full time, so it was a lot to handle. However, that was not the reason why I left the teaching field. I do want to say when I got this offer letter, I was so excited. I did not do a lot of research about this school. I was just happy to get a job with my degree. I do think it's so important as new teachers or someone new in the teaching field to make sure that you're doing a proper research at the school that you plan on working at to make sure that your values are aligned. That was where the problem was at with the school I was working at. Our values were totally different, and the way we structured growth in kids was too different. As a teacher, I do believe in tough love with room for grace and empathy. And I know my teaching philosophy is a bit stricter, so I made an effort to let my expectations be known at the beginning of the school year to not only the parents, but the students as well. And I stated, if you don't put your name on your paper, that will receive an automatic 0. I do believe that it's so important to teach ownership. Students need to be proud of the work that they produce. If you do something, put your name on it, you're showing ownership. It's such an important lesson. And also, they were second and third graders. They should automatically put their names on their paper. But the school I worked at, they believed that that was just too harsh of a punishment. So the way we structured growth and the way we viewed growth was so different. Also, I was the youngest teacher at the school, and I felt like a lot of my concerns weren't taken as seriously as the veteran teachers, not only by the parents, but also by the administration. I do think it's very important that if someone receives a role, they are there because they are qualified to be there. So they should be treated with respect regardless of their age. Also, at the school I worked at, there wasn't a special room for individuals who had special needs and special attention, versus when I used to be a substitute teacher, a lot of the schools I worked at, they had classrooms for individuals that required special attention. And this is not bad. I think it's so helpful because when you're teaching in a classroom, there's a lot of disruptions, especially with second and third graders. And sometimes you're not able to give your full attention to specific students because you're trying to calm the situation. That goes back to another of the reason why I think it's so important to properly do your research about the school that you plan on working at, especially if you're a new teacher. I do also want to say that although I was on the stricter side, I know how to have fun with my students. We did a lot of fun experiments, and I had a system where it was like Miss Precious Bucks. It's like money, teaching kids about money, but it was like fake money, obviously. And every 3 weeks or 6 weeks, I don't remember, I would purchase some items, and students could use their Miss Precious Bucks to purchase candy and toys. Keep in mind, those items I provided. They were coming from my paycheck. Not a problem. I loved my students. Because I did teach math and science, I always tried to keep my lesson plans as fun as I could, but also educational, because math is a subject that if you don't understand, it will affect you for the rest of your educational career, especially if you're taking math classes, because math builds on. I don't believe that students should be rewarded for not trying. What I would do when grading, I would give my students their raw score. And if someone was not satisfied with their grades, for example, if someone got a 60 and they came to me and they got some tutoring, I would give them similar problems of the questions that they got wrong, and then they could score half a credit back. So that means if they got all the questions right, their grade would be moved from a 60 to an 80. And I didn't want to give them full credit because I want to honor the students who got it right the first time. But I also wanted to teach my students that failure is a necessity, especially in math. You have to fail to learn things sometimes, and failure should not be a punishment. But I don't believe in just handing out grades. I do think that some students should not have moved forward to the third grade just because there was a lot of trouble in, with the math and the science. However, the school I taught at, I don't think they really believed in holding students back a grade. I do think they tried to help the students in ways that they can, but they didn't have all the resources and tools they needed. And as a teacher and someone who studies psychology, I do believe that holding a student back a grade, if it is a necessity, it's actually very good for their growth, because if someone is struggling with second and third grade math and science, they should not be moved up to third grade math and science because they're not going to learn because they don't understand the basic principles. Summarize, the reason I left teaching after 1 year is because there was just a lot of misalignment in teaching philosophies and in values with the school I previously worked at. And I'm not leaving this field permanently, but I'm pursuing other endeavors currently, so it's not on my top priority. So if you're new in the teaching field, please work at a school that not only values their students, but also supports their teachers. It doesn't matter how old the teachers are or how young the teachers are. Teachers deserve support from administration. That is all for this video. Let me know if you have any thoughts, questions, or concerns. I will be happy to talk about my previous experiences if it's helpful.